Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here again today. I'm excited to have another guest today on the podcast, Therapy, etc. Her name is Dr. Celina Benavides, and she actually was on my IG. We did an IG live about a week ago now. And, some of the things that she shared were really inspiring, and I really thought that she would be I really wanted to learn more, basically. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about parenting during COVID, but even more so, just kind of like some of the personal trials and tribulations that she's been through during this time. And so I thought that she would be able to grant parents a wealth of knowledge and just sharing that you're not alone during this time of COVID and beyond, so to speak. So I'm going to let her to our chat so we can get it started. So give me 1 second. Hello, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here again today. I was just sharing that we were doing an IG live about a week ago now. So thank you for being here and for joining me in this conversation today again.
Yeah, I'm really passionate about this topic and I'm excited to share a little bit more about my own personal experiences as well. So thanks for
Yeah,
having me. And it's great
yeah,
to.
absolutely. So I want to kind of start by knowing a little bit about you. I know that you're a mommy of two,
Mm.
but that you also had like a quarantine baby, right?
Yes.
So I'm curious to know, like, you know, we kind of heard a little bit about COVID before, like a week ago last year, if you think about it.
Yes.
We're recording this a little early, so just for people to know, today's March 8th. But like later this week of last year is when things kind of started really closing down, and you were pregnant during this time.
Yes, I
So
was.
how was that for you as you started kind of hearing the news and things of what was going on?
Well, I think that like many women during this time, it felt a little bit in the distance, like a lot of people actually, not just women. I think it was something that still seemed abstract. We didn't have enough information
Hmm.
at the time, or what we know
Hmm.
now. And we didn't realize how widespread it was already, and when it had really impacted in America. And
Right.
at the time, so my daughter came a little early, but she came March 26th. And leading to
Hmm.
that, it was in about February, I think mid-February, maybe the end of February, things started to change where people were going to appointments, including myself, with masks on because we were hearing about this virus. There wasn't enough information. Um,
Uh-huh.
but it drastically changed things about going to appointments by myself. And that is hard, has been difficult for women because they have missed out on having a partner or a loved one present with them for their regular checkups to listen to the heartbeat together. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so there's a lot that's happened there, and people have gotten very innovative and, doing the Zoom call or the FaceTime in that, and they can still have their partner listen in or do the recordings. But there was this change that was happening. And we had to also make a decision that was really difficult about going into the hospital and what our birth plan was going to be like. Um,
Oh, that's right. That probably shifted as well.
It did. We had this idea of how, and like for many people, birth plans change, and you have to be adaptable and okay with that. But it would
Hmm.
also felt very scary to go into the hospital at that time. So the fear of the unknown, being concerned about is it a possibility that we would be contracting it? And I
Hmm.
gave birth in Pasadena Hospital, which was a wonderful hospital.
Hmm.
I had great care and service there. But at the time, it was also a hotbed, and they were taking a lot of cases. So it was quite scary when I went in for delivery. And we had to go have delivery the day prior. We had an ultrasound, or excuse me, a C-section planned for one day because I had complications.
Hmm.
And it was probably due to the stress of what was going on at the time, but the baby's heartbeat had dropped. And
Oh,
I went for
wow.
a checkup. She was concerned and decided that I needed to go in to be operated on that day so we could do delivery. And I just
Wow.
walked off of the curb and went in. And
By yourself at the time.
at the time, yes, I was able
Whew.
to. Yeah, it was quite scary. And that, a lot of people, and I feel even fortunate because at that time, some hospitals and, like New York, were requiring that women were delivering on their own. They could
I
not have.
heard that. I
Yeah.
heard that. Oh my goodness.
I'm so grateful that that was not the case for me. We thought that might have been. Things were changing all the time. I was very scared that that was going to be the case. And I admire those women of having to go through that, because it's such a vulnerable time point to have to deliver on your own. Thank goodness who, they, World Health Organization made it, strongly advised that it's not ethical to be doing that. And that impacted me, and I
Yeah.
was able to deliver with someone. But something I haven't shared with you is that we're a very high risk household, and
Mm.
my my husband has an autoimmune disorder, and
Oh, I see.
was at, someone who could be very at risk with COVID. He can't even take like Tylenol if he had like a health complication.
Oh,
So
man.
we were both concerned for him. He wanted to be present, and I was concerned that if he was, what if he contracted it? And
Right, right. And then it'd be a bigger situation later,
yes, and I
bigger
think
risk.
it, we were debating back and forth even up until the night before I went for the checkup, for my last checkup, which I thought was going to be the day prior to delivery.
Hmm.
And, um, we both found it very hard. We both cried. We're very moved by the support we got from other people, but I didn't want the responsibility of and the fear of losing him, and the idea of like, what if I'm being selfish and saying yes, I want you to be there, and then you contract it, and what if you don't
Yeah.
recover? So
Oh,
um,
man. Just even as you say that, I'm like feeling like all the feelings right now.
yeah, so it was really really difficult moment, but um, ultimately decided that he would not be present, and that was so hard for us.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I
I
think
didn't
that's
know this.
yeah, I hadn't really, besides family, we hadn't really shared that with other people. And it was really challenging and emotional. I think this is why when I went in, because when I went for the checkup and they could not get the baby's heart rate on the heart rate monitor. And then I had been having complications, but she had looked at me and she's doing ultrasound. So what changed? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
And because she's like it's yeah, so anyways, ultimately I was very fortunate. I had my wonderful sister-in-law. She immediately dropped everything, drove over and joined me at the hospital. um
So they did allow somebody, so you did have at least a support system there. You didn't do it completely by yourself.
no
Oh
so
my goodness, thank
grateful
goodness,
for
because
that.
that's so hard.
Yeah, so my dad drove me to my appointment because again Hunter was not going to be there. He dropped me off to go to the appointment. Then I'm in there and I'm realizing, uh-oh, things are not going well with the baby and we're going to have to do a delivery earlier than expected. Thank goodness I also had my hospital bag with me, because at this point I was starting to bring my hospital bag all the time, so you just never know.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
that's smart. That's smart.
and I needed it then. And then my dad picked me up outside. He was waiting outside of the building, also being very careful. And he picked me up, drove me right over to the hospital, which was just 2 blocks down. And
Hmm.
I got dropped off. I was checked in and admitted on my own. And then later, my sister in law joined me, which I'm really grateful for.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man. How were you feeling during those moments? Like I can't even imagine.
Once we made the decision that this was what we're going to do, I kind of like switched gears. I'm like, okay. Then I felt like I gathered myself up and I was like, this is, I'm still really fortunate that I have my partner here with me. He's alive and healthy. We're not in a
Hmm.
situation where he is facing this, going through this right now.
Hmm.
Um, Even though this is going to be hard, people do this all the time. Women do this all the time around the
I
world.
know. That's
And
true. That's true.
so I just, drew on the strength of those around me, and my inner strength, and
Yeah.
I just focused on trying to stay calm. And I did a lot of meditation, put on some guided breathings, and just focused on that because I knew I needed to make sure that I was centered and okay. Because the
Mhm.
most important thing at that time was the baby and having a healthy delivery for her.
Right,
Um,
right. So then did he not meet the baby until you went home or
we
wow,
started
and because you had a C-section, that was a few days after, I'm assuming.
Yes. So then we're in the
Wow.
hospital. We're eager. Normally, you can take, and even they were trying to get everyone out of the hospital as fast as possible if there were not complications after delivery. And thankfully,
Mhm.
even though we were experiencing complications at the end of my pregnancy, she was born and healthy, and we did not have to do NICU or anything like that.
Oh my
So
God. Such a blessing.
I know, I was very grateful, especially since we had this little scare at the end, and we had other health complications too. So I was very concerned that we were going to have to stay longer. But my OBGYN was like, if everything's going well, let's try to get you out even sooner than they would for a typical C-section. So even though it
Mhm,
was more painful to be like hurrying up the recovery process, we didn't want to stay. I didn't want to stay in the hospital longer than I need to because I was still concerned
mhm,
about at that point. I also, right after I delivered, I'm in the like the recovery room before you go and get admitted to the actual room that you're going to be staying in.
mhm.
That's for like monitoring of yourself and the baby. They had just said that one of the nurses was talking with another nurse, and then I followed up asking, "What did you just say?" Um,
Give me all the 411. I didn't hear you.
but they were talking about that there was a COVID case within the maternity ward, and prior to that, they had said, "Oh no, it's only in other parts of the hospital. We have it completely separated." But someone had just delivered, and she had COVID in her partner, and so they were having to do like a secure area. Uh,
Oh, wow. So there's even so many risks there, just even within your vicinity.
Yes, and when you're in recovery too, and you're waiting for several days, they're doing like wellness checks on the baby and you. And again, I had wonderful care. I was very grateful for that, but it was still concerning that people are coming in and out of your room, and of course
Mhm.
they're taking utmost care. They're wearing masks. They're wearing gloves. Actually, at the time, not everyone was wearing masks because there was still minimal information about
What it
COVID.
was even. Yeah, I don't think I even got like my an actual mask until one of a mutual friend of ours actually dropped one off. But it was probably like early April when I actually got an actual mask because I was like, where am I supposed to get this mask thing from? I don't understand what's happening. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So now when I think about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had so many doctors and nurses coming in and out of there, people, specialists who are checking in, and they're seeing lots of other patients too, and not all of them are wearing masks. I mean, everyone was
Right.
like disinfecting when they came in the room, like washing their hands or doing hand sanitizer, but like, oh gosh, I could have, easily contracted something there. I'm very grateful that we did not have that in our family. So thankfully.
Wow. So then now you go home and checkups and everything else has to be like, how was that? Because I'm assuming now people are somewhat wearing masks, but then you have to be really careful. How was that process for you?
So after a C-section, every state has a little bit of different standards, even different countries. Some do, depending on when they do the wellness check. If you do a vaginal delivery, it's a little bit sooner that you might be going in for a C-section. You have different checkpoints that you're getting checked at. And after I did my initial wellness check, then they tell you, okay, then you come back in 4 weeks after that. But my OBGYN said also you can try to stretch it if you want to. Um,
Mhm.
Depending on how your recovery is going, because things are so uncertain. And at the time, we also felt like, oh, things are going to get back to normal soon,
Mhm. Mhm. Like
which
by June, by the
yes,
summer, by Labor
after
Day.
summer,
Yes.
yeah. So instead of going in at 4 weeks, then the debate was like, do I go in at 5 weeks? And I ended up going in at 5.5 weeks. And I had pain. It wasn't like my first recovery with my firstborn. The I was having additional swelling. I was
Mhm.
having more complications with it, and I did not want to go in. That probably wasn't the best thing to do, but I was still scared, and I had that fear
Mhm.
about what if I contract something and I'm separated from the baby and I'm nursing. What if I brought something back home?
Right.
Um,
Because yeah, because then your husband also.
yeah. And it was eerie because, again, at this time, everything is shut down. So driving on the freeway,
Mhm.
I remember taking a video and just picture because I wasn't the one driving.
Yeah.
My dad was taking it
Good.
at the time. I'm sorry. My husband took me and the baby.
Okay.
Um, and it was just eerie because there's no cars on the freeway.
Uh-huh.
All the light up signs along the way are showing, wear a mask, social distance, etc.
Mhm. The
And then
city looked like the apocalypse hit, right?
it did, and I was like,
This is
oh.
in LA, everybody, in LA area. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, especially if you get the context of how packed LA freeways are and how much traffic. I think that's notorious. Everyone knows about LA traffic. Um,
Mhm.
and so where my doctor's appointment is, it's in a medical building, and it's usually packed. The streets there's cars along lined up along the streets as well as the parking structures nearby, and it was quite empty, and you're only seeing people going out and about with masks on, and people who
Yes.
were, who it's like they needed to go in. Everyone else,
Right.
you're trying to delay and cancel appointments. Um, so I waited until like right up until my appointment came, because I didn't want to have to be inside the building in the waiting room longer than I needed to.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
went in, and again, there was very few people, and normally it's a much busier space. Had
Mhm.
had the appointment, and that felt eerie too. It just was like more somber. Um, Again, I was at this point, I wasn't as stressed. I was much more calm, and the baby had been delivered, and we're grateful for her health. But it still felt odd, and still concerned
Yeah.
about, are we going to be safe? Are things okay?
Because everything is so up in the air at that point. I just remember like going outside of just like my where I was living at the time, because I ended up moving, but where I was living at the time, and just kind of seeing like the city, the community, and it was just like, what is going on? Like it was so eerie.
Yeah.
Eerie is the right word, somber, like you said. Like I remember just looking around and being like, is this real life? Because it just didn't feel like it.
And I think it still feels surreal when you think about it, because these are the kind of things that happen in movies.
I know.
So it was odd. Everyone has been hard hit. I think that it was a difficult time going through the end of my pregnancy, and I feel for the women who are still dealing with that, having to go into the doctor for regular checkups, and they're having to
Mhm.
navigate that, and having concerns about, the birth is a joyous moment, and a lot of the celebratory things that you may be thinking of, celebrating with loved ones and having them come to visit the baby, you're
Mhm.
missing out on those things, and
Yeah.
really challenging and hard for families with
Mhm.
newborns.
So what about like for you, like as you are kind of going through these motions and have to now kind of keep family away, which I'm assuming with your first baby, you probably had a lot of visitors and a lot of
Yeah.
help. And I know we touched a little bit about this in like the IG live that we had last week, but how were you navigating like not having the support and the people around you that you probably had with your first baby?
Yes, I think, again, the pandemic has created an issue of social support for everyone, because you're so isolated, for good reason. We're trying to be safe. We're trying to take these precautions for ourselves as well as our loved ones. And
Mm-hmm.
when my firstborn came, I was happy to have the family come. They came that same day, in-laws on my side, both sides. I was like, "Come over, meet the baby.
Yeah.
I'm excited. This is wonderful." And everyone has
Yeah.
different experiences. Maybe that's not how everyone felt, but that was my stance
Mm-hmm.
giving birth. I was
Mm-hmm.
excited and overjoyed, um, and we wanted that. We wanted our family around, and then this time, it's been very
Yeah.
hard to have to make decisions about.
Like who can come over?
Yeah,
Have they been tested, right? Like, or
yeah.
there wasn't even tests during that time.
No, we didn't. Again, yeah, there's so much that
Mm.
we know now. It feels kind of silly to say, "Oh, at the time, um, but we just didn't know what the risks were. We didn't know who might be a carrier. It was very scary, and still is, the idea that someone could be a carrier and be asymptomatic, where no symptoms
Mhm.
are showing, and maybe that it doesn't even impact them, but they could pass it on to someone. So
Mhm.
my husband and I had to make some difficult decisions, because again, not only do we have a newborn and a young child, my oldest is 2.5. Um,
Mm.
we were very concerned, especially me. I was concerned about it for him, that the idea of, what if something were to happen to him? And
Mhm.
with his autoimmune disorder, there was a time a few years ago when we were first going through diagnosis of that, where we almost did lose him, and we've been through that. We had to go through
Oh,
that.
wow.
But this time it was then having to make decisions together about, what risks are we willing to take, and we had to ultimately make the tough decision that we weren't going to see family except who was in our immediate household. and
Mhm.
and we've only seen two other people, or other people who had quarantined for over 2 weeks,
Yeah.
to make sure
Yeah.
that they weren't a carrier and would come over. So
Yeah,
that,
because you had the new baby, your little baby, but then also your husband. So it's like a lot of things to navigate.
yeah, and that was really challenging, because here we are. We're about she's my the baby is about to be a year in a few weeks, on March 26th.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And we're really excited, but it's about to be a year and she's still, we do regular FaceTimes. We're able to be connected in other ways, but she still has not been able to meet my in-laws nor that side of the family right now, or
Oh,
my other extended
wow.
family. And
Yeah.
that has been really hard. There's been times where I've cried over that because I family is so important to me, and I
Mhm,
on both sides. And I'm really feel fortunate that I married into an amazing family. I have brothers and sisters on that side who I
mhm.
adore. Same with his parents, and not having that and not having them, our girls be close to them, physically close to them, has been a challenge, and it's been very emotional. Um,
Mhm.
but we had to take extra precautions, maybe more so than others may have chosen for themselves, because we were so concerned about not just contracting it, but what kind of treatment would he be able to receive, if any at all. Um,
Right, because as it is, it's kinda like, write it out unless it's too hard that you have to go to the hospital, and then it's like ICU situation, not just like a checkup, you know?
um,
So
right,
it's really it's and it's also, really scary. Like I know a few people that have had COVID and it's very isolating, which we know that, but even more so when it's somebody that we know. Like I have a dear friend of mine that had it and
mm,
fortunately she's okay, but at the time I was like, "Oh my goodness, like are we going to lose her?" Cuz and she's our age, mid 30s and it was like really scary to see that and to know that there's nothing that we can do. Like literally nothing.
right. And the idea of having that loved one, if it's severe enough and they have to go to the hospital, that they have to be there on their own if it progressed far enough and you don't get to say your goodbyes in person. It's very yeah, emotionally draining, and because you're carrying that concern and fear all the time, and of that kind of worry.
Mhm.
So that has been challenging, that we've had to be separated, but this is why I think it's so important to make sure we're staying connected even if we're physically separated.
Mhm.
And so that way they can also feel included in our lives, because we want that for the girls and for them. And
Mhm.
it helps us too with our emotional well-being to still have these regular phone conversations, video calls, that kind of thing, because that
Mhm.
helps bridge that gap right now.
Right. So how have you felt that you've been able to take care of yourself during this really different journey from your first baby, like first delivery and still living it now with two little ones at home?
Yeah, and I think this is something we have talked about, that self care is so important, especially when you feel like you don't have the time for it. That's probably when you need to do it the most.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because if you're not in a good space yourself, if you're not allowing time for healing, for recovery, rest, then it's harder to give to others, especially when you have children. And
Right.
to be a more present parent, to be a more loving and caring present, especially knowing that in the beginning you're tired. I think all parents are probably really tired.
I know quite a few friends, like I'm not a parent myself, but I know quite a few friends that are parents and I'm just like, bow down to you. Like, I don't know how you guys are doing it. It's
Yeah,
tough. Like I can barely, manage myself.
yeah, it's a new level of being tired, but also at the same time, like it's kind of the usual right now. But it's still a really wonderful period in our lives, a really joyful time. We also try to make sure that we're giving time for ourselves to have some self care, and it looks
Yes.
different for every person.
Mm,
But for me, something that is really helpful, and this is where I draw a little bit on the positive psychology side, is trying to focus on mindfulness and savoring and
mhm,
meditation. So those are the things,
mhm.
the tools that I use. And without sounding so formal in the way I talk about that, but um, I think meditation is, there's a lot of different formats for that. People can download apps for that. You can listen to free guided meditation. Some
Mhm.
people are able to do that on their own. For me, I need a guided meditation to walk me through, okay, at this point, relax this part of your body, do that.
Yep. Because then you're like paying attention to every little piece. So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So I do that, especially before, when I have like a quiet moment, which might happen sometimes during nap time if both of them go down at the same time, or or before bed. That has helpful for me to kind of like recenter from a busy day. And I think the mindfulness and savoring are really great to try to help yourself be more present and in the moment, because otherwise, if your thoughts are going everywhere, it's hard to be grounded. If you
Oh,
start
for
to,
sure.
yeah. And um, then it's easy to slip in this thing of like ruminating on negative thoughts or ruminating on things that the what ifs or the things you cannot control. And that is
Mhm.
where you can get stuck. And I think that
Mhm.
that impacts your well-being, and as well as then your children, because are turning to us for everything. They're so dependent on us.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
again, if we want to be calm in how we respond to children, if we want to be loving in how we respond to them, not be as frustrated when we respond to them, then we have to make sure we're in a good space, because otherwise it's
Mhm.
that much harder to respond in with patience when things get
Mhm.
frustrating or difficult.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with you on that. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about like what are some of the things that I've done that have helped me kind of ground myself a little bit more. And I feel like I've tried various things, not only because I like to recommend them to my clients, or sometimes my clients will recommend things to me, and I'm like, I'm going to try that. But one of the things that I started doing recently is what they call like cave showers, which is
Hmm.
basically like taking a shower with the lights off.
Oh,
And so,
interesting.
yeah, it's like kind of like a game changer for me right now. And if I take a night shower, then I actually bought like a little night light that will do like the light will be various colors depending on like how I want it. So a little bit more dim, or maybe like a green or a yellow, or just like a white or an off white. But having that on as I take a shower really like helps me kind of feel grounded.
Mm,
And shower time is usually time when I'm like thinking about a lot of things, but
yeah.
I don't want that though. I kind of want to just like I want to break. And now that I've started incorporating these like cave showers, which like I said, like turn the lights off when you're taking a shower. And
Yeah.
I will have like the door open, but so just a little bit of light is coming in, allows me to feel a lot more grounded. And like I feel like I'm self-soothing, like I'm like, okay, like I know there's all these things I need to do. And people that are really anxious during this time. And so if I'm feeling good, then hopefully I can be present for other people as well. So
I,
little different things, that I've been like, I think all of us are trying to find ways that make sense for each other.
yeah. And I love what you just said about, well, again, if you're grounded, if you're taking care of yourself, then you're able to show up and be more present for others. And I think that's kind of
Mhm.
key. If you're, whether you're a parent or not, if you're in a role, if you have a career where you are having to, um, whether it's in the service field, whether it's in a professional capacity where you may be having to work with clients, you can just perform better. That's my husband's
Yeah.
line of research. Actually, he's a psychologist too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah, you can perform better within your work if you are
Yeah.
in a better state of being as well. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, with all of this, I know that you've been sharing a bunch of like parenting tips. You have a YouTube channel now. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about the inspiration behind, creating kind of like a platform for yourself to share some of the tools and tips that you've known.
Yeah, thank you. There were a few different sources of inspiration, but one thing that was common for me, it was to get a lot of inquiries from friends or family with parenting questions. And it wasn't often that the question was something I could answer in like a quick text, where it was like a quick yes or no. It was a lengthy text response, or it would be followed up with, this is how it looks. And I try to describe it. So I would end up doing like a recording or just video time and be like, here, let me put my phone up on the side and I'll kind of show you what I mean. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I found like I was repeating myself often, because some questions were coming up repeatedly. And I was realizing that, one, there was this need for it because there's a lot of information out there. There's so much
Hmm.
information, especially around parenting topics right now, but not all of it is accurate. And sometimes I would check different sources too, because I'm constantly looking at the research as well. And I'd see parts of it that were based in theory or practical knowledge that was grounded in evidence-based practices, but then it was mixed in with other things that were like, oh no, that's just completely off the mark. It's not actually accurate and actually going to have a negative impact if you do it that way.
Hmm.
And when I would get questions about like, what would you recommend to look at, I would be like, well, it's not that here's a source that's good on this topic, but here's another source that's great on this topic. And it was trying to piecemeal when I was passing out these resources. again, just for friends and family who would send me a message on Instagram or who would text me or they'd call and talk about something that was going on with their child and they wanted to get some advice on it, where I realized maybe if I share it a little bit more broadly, a little bit more formally, where I would record myself or I share it on Instagram, and it might be helpful and informative for others. And I
Mm-hmm.
was surprised that it has been. I've gotten a lot of messages from that where people are saying, "Oh, thank you so much for this. This is helping
It's
me."
definitely a need.
Yeah, and I feel that parents want the best for their children. I don't think that's the lack, or there's it's not like there's a lack of desire there, but it's how do you determine what is credible information
Mm-hmm.
and try to implement that. And then people also want, I think, guidance on how do you implement it well, because sometimes things can seem a little bit
Right,
abstract. It's like, well,
right.
what do you mean by that? And I wanted to
Uh-huh.
play it. And the other piece is I felt like I was doing a lot of sharing back of the research. So I'd collect research, I would, analyze different groups, and I was doing a lot of sharing back, but in the professional capacity. I would submit to journals. So again, academic papers, conferences,
Mm-hmm.
but again, these are in academic circles. And they weren't being dispersed back in the way that I wanted them to go in the hands of educators and to
Uh-huh.
parents. And that's a
Right.
very different uh, way of giving back that information. I think it's really important because that's the whole reason why I got into doing scientific research in the first place, but it wasn't being circulated back in the way that I wanted it to equip people with these tools and strategies. So that was the other aspect of it, and I really wanted to provide it to people, and not. And again, it brings up the issue for me about equity.
Mm-hmm.
That it's really important to me that you know not everyone can afford having a parent coach because that can be quite expensive. And although that is something that I do, it was also really important for me to give it back to people, maybe from a low income background or from a background that maybe they're just going through financial difficulty or not. Maybe that's just not something they want to do or invest, or they don't have the time in doing parental coaching, but that they want to get resources and information. And it was
Right.
important to me to provide it in a way that was affordable. So some of this is free that I do on YouTube, the things I post
Yeah.
on Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
or in a more affordable format, which might be like a workshop or
Mm-hmm.
a course series where
Mm-hmm.
it's not as much as that you have to invest into it as a parental coach, because that's something might be sustained and it can be expensive over time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's an investment that you're definitely making, but I wanted to make it more affordable for everyone and equip people. If they want these tools, it should be free for people to
Right.
have.
Right. And then like, some of the things that I've seen your videos, they're very like hands-on. Like I
Yeah.
saw the one that you created with your daughter about the beans
Oh,
in
yeah.
the but
This
or
music
like the
bin.
plastic, yeah, the
Yeah.
bin. And I'm like, okay, I like this. So I like how it's like things that like, you don't have to go out and like invest a ton of money. I mean, you can wash those beans later and then still cook them. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's really cool to see that the stuff that you're implementing is things that I feel parents can use, with things that they have in their home.
And that's why thank you for that. Several of the activities that I design or that I have put together or I'm sharing are ones you can use with just simple household items. I mean,
Hmm.
we do invest in, and we consider an investment in like getting books and puzzles and other objects, but those are expensive and they add up. And if you're going through a difficult time, or maybe you just want to pare back a bit because of space, kids' toys can get everywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
Then it's also important to be able to think about like what do you have in your natural environment that you can use. I think that's really important too to share back, because maybe it's a way that people have not thought about it. Like with the idea of the sensory bin, I think people do sensory bins, but often it's with the hands, manipulating with their hands and fingers. And I wanted to show other ways where you can actually do
hmm
this with your feet, with your legs. And it also provides great sensory input, which is great for the
hmm
calming the nervous system and all of that.
hmm hmm
So that's my whole goal, is to provide these resources to parents and educators to help them feel more capable and confident in the work that they do with their children,
hmm
and to kind of share these best practices that are grounded in science to help have better outcomes for children, which is my whole goal. I
yeah,
want
yeah,
that for the next generation. I want us to be raising happy, healthy, well-rounded children, and I think that
yeah,
really starts at home.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Selena, I want to thank you so much for being here today. I mean, it's been such an awesome conversations that we had, last week, but today I just really enjoyed how the conversation went. We kind of had a different idea for today, and I just kind of like love like the direction that it went because, I really want the conversations that we're having here to be different but inspiring and moving for people and that they can relate. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of people who listen to this that are going to really relate to your story
Thank
because
you.
it's such a impactful one and such a real one that so many people have gone through within the last year.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me share. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited about the opportunity to join you for your episode.
Yeah.
I go back to the whole idea of supporting parents in this way. So if people are interested and you want more information, you can check
Yep.
me out at
Yes.
drcelina.com. And that's Celina, Celina, or you can
Mhm.
find me on Instagram, and that's Dr. Celina B. B as in boy.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm going to link all these things also. So if you are interested in connecting with Dr. Celina Benavides or just, getting to know her more within her YouTube channel or her Instagram, then you will have more information in like the description somewhere below. But thank you again for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to partnering with you on future stuff too. We have some other things cooking.
That's right. Stay tuned. We have some things, in the mix. So awesome. Thank you so much. All right,
Thanks.
everybody. Thank you for being here and listening. And we will talk soon. Take care.